Sea of Red, it's time for another Fireside Chat, the official podcast of Flames fans. It's go time.
Well, the Calgary Flames finished the week with 2 wins and a loss, and quite a loss in Winnipeg. We'll talk about that as we get there, but as always, I'm Dan alongside Matt. Matt, overall thoughts on this week?
I thought it was a very good week of Flames hockey. Not so much in the first half of the Buffalo game, but after that, I thought the Flames played better than the other teams, even in the 5-2 loss.
Yeah, I think that's fair. As we've talked about, the Calgary Flames don't always play well when they're playing against lesser opponents. They had a couple days off. I think had 3 or 4 days off. Let me check here. But before Buffalo, they had been sitting on the shelf for 3 days. On Thursday, the Buffalo Sabres came to Calgary. Like you said, the first half of that game, not great. Not a lot of the Flames doing really anything. And Peltier breaks the tie in the third period with this one. Wolf makes 32 saves. 5-2 win for the Flames. Now, really, it's not a 5-2 win. How often do you score 2 empty netters?
Exactly.
Like once you've been scored on empty net, don't pull your goalie again.
Yeah. Well, Buffalo doesn't really care about goal differential. They're not going to make the playoffs anyway.
When you look at it on the score sheet, it looks like a bigger win than it was. This was a pretty even game.
Yeah, and realistically, coming off a long road trip, the first game back at home usually is a bit of a dog for regardless of which team you are. So the fact that the Flames were able to hang in there for the first half of the game before they got their legs under them was good, and the fact that they were able to hold on for the 5-2 win.
That's right, yep.
You know, it's good to see, like, the tenacity that this team has to be able to endure struggles at times has been impressive, and the reason why they're in a playoff spot.
Yeah, and I think, this is one where I think they realized, or I hope they realized, that maybe they were playing down to an opponent and were able to correct things. Like, I'm not sure exactly what was said in the dressing room, but it looked like a different second half than it was first half.
Yes. One thing I want to note, that with the extended break that the team had and having some time to practice, I noticed that the Flames have been doing like little chip passes to each other more, like especially through the neutral zone, and it's like they've focused on that specifically, breakouts of their own zone, even setting up small plays in the offensive zone, and their passing over the last 3 games I have felt has been a lot more crisp overall.
Any idea why?
I think just practicing more and attention to details more so. You normally see like the Flames making like a pass, then like the guy skating for a bit, and then he might pass it again. And instead, like they're taking shorter amounts of strides and making sure that like the play is as effective as possible to break into the offensive zone instead of just kind of running into the defender and hoping for the best.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I don't know why it's changed, but now that you mention it, yeah, I can kind of see that. So the Flames get the big 5-2 win in the Dome against Buffalo, the only time this year they played the Buffalo in the Dome. They've now completed their series against Buffalo. Buffalo won the first one on November 9th. The Flames won the second one on January 23rd. And good riddance till next year. We don't have to play you again.
Yep.
Then Calgary goes to Minnesota, to the Twin Cities, and a 5-4 win for the Flames here. Matt, Kuzmenko gets 3 points. Did you see that anywhere on your bingo card this week?
Well, earlier this month, I said that, and even a little bit towards the end of last month, I started to see little parts of his game turning around. And, it was one of those where if he got a goal, you could see that he would probably go on a bit of a heater. And the last 2 games have been the best 2 games of this season. And he looks like end of season, once being acquired by Calgary Kuzmenko, instead of the first half of each of last year and this year.
Yeah, I mean, it's Every time he looks bad, I mean, we've talked about this. We've talked about this with our friend Kevin from Shifts and Pucks. Every time he looks bad, it's like, he starts to look good again. Like, he hasn't been bad long enough for them to waive him or, send him down or anything like that. He always seems to find a way to pull himself out of his funk.
Yeah, and like today in the game against Winnipeg, specifically, like he was probably the best player on the Flames team. And that's not to say that other people weren't playing well. He was just noticeable every time he was out there.
For sure. Yeah, no, he's looking good, and I think one of the stories of the week is Kuzmenko and the fact that he's doing so well. I think the other one, especially in this game, Clark Bishop gets his first goal as a Flame, first goal in a long time.
Yeah,
being called
December 2018 was his only other NHL goal with the Golden Knights.
Yeah, and you and I talked about that. That's a heck of a thing for Clark Bishop, and it turns out he and his wife just recently had a baby, so I guess his parents were in town to meet the baby, and so got to see him playing in at least the game in Calgary. I don't think they went to Minnesota, but got to see him back in the NHL.
Well, that's good. Yeah, I thought that this game was a fairly flat game until Lauko just decided to blow up the whole contest. That hit on Bahl, I do not understand why the referees and Toronto degraded it. Like, that should have been an automatic, you toss the guy.
Yeah, I mean, even when he got 5 minutes, I was like, yeah, okay, that's fine for what it is. But downgrading that to 2 minutes, I would love to know from players' safety why.
Yeah, like you literally run his head face first into a metal bar, and that's okay. Like, a 2-minute penalty, you're basically tacitly saying that that's an okay play to do. Like, literally to shove a guy head first into a metal pipe.
That's pretty much what you're saying, is this is fine, and next guy do it, you'll get 2 minutes as well.
And like it was a completely reckless play by Lauko, and the fact that the Flames after that point went into complete rageaholic mode, where, even Rasmus Anderson punching Fleury in the face, Lomberg jumping Lauko and feeding him a number of punches, and, like the Flames taking runs at guys. I don't blame him. Like, I if I was a member of the Flames too, it's like, well, the refs aren't going to have our back in, calling the playbook as it should be. So, take a little bit of liberties on their end as well. Like, it got out of hand because of the refs.
With Ryan Lomberg, that's what you expect. But as the guy who I think will be the next captain of the Calgary Flames in Anderson, I think he needs to know when to check his emotions. And that's something we saw as an issue with young Tkachuk when he was here. So, I'm glad he has those emotions, but I think as one of the leaders on the team, he needs to know when to check them.
And to be honest, in this particular case, I was perfectly fine with him responding in that way. Because it also says to everybody on the team that, hey, that kind of crap is not okay, and can't literally slam one of our guys face first into the boards and, not get a response. And I think that was part of the reason why, like, Tkachuk was a little bit at odds with the Flames, because he got into certain situations and the rest of the team didn't step up for him. And I would much rather have to kill off a penalty than, having a bunch of people that don't care about their teammates, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's ways to care that don't involve punching Marc-Andre Fleury in the face, though.
Well, he's there. He's wearing a mask. He's fine.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that there shouldn't have been a response. I just don't know that Flower's not the one who ran him. Like, I'm not sure that punching the goalie is the appropriate reaction.
No, I agree. And he did answer more appropriately by scoring shortly thereafter. But, it's one of those where the whole Flames team it was good to see them kind of rally behind, and step up for each other, especially with the blue line getting knocked down to only having 5 skaters, and seeing the team play very well defensively until the last minute or so of the game. I just think that it was, frankly, like, this team at times seems a little lifeless in certain circumstances. And when, something like that happens, it's good to see healthy and normal response to that incident instead of, just going passively from that point.
I don't know. When I punched people in the face as a kid, my doctor didn't see it as healthy and normal, but sure, we'll go with that.
Well, the passions got elevated, and they didn't necessarily channel it in the right way, but
like I said, I'm glad they're passionate. I just don't know that was the right response.
I agree. It's
the one guy I do want to give credit to is Ryan Lomberg, though. Like, he's not just this game, but overall, there's some guys who just go out there and want to fight with everybody. Lomberg seems to really know when to pick his spot. He knows the right time to go out and do what Lomberg does, and when to sort of not get himself in trouble for doing it, and how to lift the team. Like, I think that is a little bit of an underrated skill for a guy of Lomberg's spot on the roster.
Yeah, I agree.
So good to see Lomberg reacting. Good to see everybody else reacting, and I think that they took some of that anger into the game against the Winnipeg Jets. This one very different. Obviously, Kevin Bahl is out, and we saw some new look lines, some new look defensive pairings here. Why don't I run through these, and then we can talk about them, and then we'll talk about the rest of the game.
Mm-hmm.
The Calgary Flames' first line was Jonathan Huberdeau, Nazem Kadri, and Jacob Pelletier. Blake Coleman, Michael Backlund, Matt Coronado was the second line. Pospisil, Sharon Govich, Kuzmenko was line 3, and Lomberg, Rooney, and Bishop line 4. On defense, we had Uyghur and Mirmanov, Hanley and Anderson, Bean and Pakal, and obviously Vladar and Nets. So what did you think of the way those lines produced tonight?
I thought that everybody except for the goaltender had a fairly good game, and if it was Wolf and net, the game probably goes to overtime or the Flames win it. But Vladar had a really bad game.
He did. You know what, though? I think the Flames gave, 2 power plays to the best power play in the league? Like, you've got to expect to be scored on in that case.
Yeah.
And I thought there was a lack of discipline tonight. I mean, there was one too many men that was called. There's one that wasn't. There should not be too many men in one game.
Yes, I agree. And the Flames admittedly did get away with a few things in the contest, and the lack of discipline was not good for this team. But in terms of like the 5-on-5 normal play, like I thought that the Flames were quite effective in, especially after the first period. They struggled a little bit at getting shots at Comrie in the first, but after that, I've thought that they were the better of the two teams for the rest of the night. It was just, untimely goals against by Vladar that kind of set the Flames back.
Yeah, I thought they played okay, and I like these lineups. Like, when we look at those lines, good for Jacob Pelletier for coming from a guy who didn't make the team out of camp, who cleared waivers, to now playing with Huberdeau and Kadri. Like, that, I think, it says a lot about where Pelletier is at right now.
Well, the thing is that with Pelletier, it seemed like after the injuries that he sustained last year, that he was a little gun-shy. And even in the preseason, he didn't look like he was going to get to the areas he needed to in order to be an effective player at the NHL level, which is why he got waived, because he was frankly terrible in the preseason. And good on him for finding his passion and intensity again, for getting to those right areas, because he was very effective the year before his injuries at, getting into the right areas. It's just hard when, you're not doing those things. It's much the same struggles that Coronado had last year. And, seeing the growth in each of their games where they're becoming effective middle six players for this team.
Yeah, like if you look at Jacob Pelletier and the way he's been, I'd say this week and last week, like, this does not look like the same guy. And, if we told you that this guy started the year in the American League, you would probably not believe us. Like, he looks like a very different player. And I think the Coronado example is a great example there. But I think Pelletier is an NHLer to stay now.
Yes, barring injury troubles, like he should be a full-time NHLer from now on. And to me, he looks a lot like a guy like Blake Coleman, who can be that guy who can contribute on both sides of the puck and be that effective energy player. And he's definitely one of those guys that pumps up his teammates.
And I think that's a good comparison. Another line I wanted to focus on here, I didn't know what to make of it on paper, but Pospisil, Sharangovich, and Kuzmenko. I like the way that looked on the ice. I like the way those three worked together. Sharangovich down the middle on that one. Obviously, they moved him to center with a lack of centerman right now. But I'd keep that line together.
Yeah, I agree. And even if you keep or want to shake up that line, like remove Pospisil from that line and insert a different forward. If like when Connor Zary gets better, that's what I would do is shift Pospisil down to the fourth line and throw Zary in between the two guys. And
so you'd have Sharangovich and Kuzmenko on the wing and Zary down the middle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to break up Backlund Coleman. I think those guys have proven as Flames they work best together. So you're not moving Coronado down with Sharangovich and Kuzmenko. So, right now, I think until Zary's back, that's the best line because you're not going to put Bishop, Rooney, or Lomberg up there.
No. And I think that, Sharangovich and Kuzmenko are both starting to break out of their funk. And because of the fact that they had so much chemistry last year, they're seeming to be bouncing off of each other a lot over this past week. So it'll be interesting to see if that carries forward.
I'm starting to wonder if those two might be, better than the sum of their parts. Like it reminds me of the 3M line years ago that was arguably better than the three guys individually. Like I'm wondering if Sharangovich and Kuzmenko together is what makes them both successful.
Yeah, and it was also something to note that in the Winnipeg game especially, Kuzmenko was actually throwing the body around a number of times, which basically for the first half of the season, that was not a thing. And, it'll be interesting to see if what we've seen this week carries forward through the rest of the season. Do you keep Kuzmenko even on a reduced salary, obviously, but and try to see if you can gain some consistency with that player, because I think for in the room purposes, he is definitely one of the more popular players on the team. So
I think one of the questions would be how low can you go?
Yeah.
Money wise, I'm not paying him I wouldn't even pay him half of what he's getting now.
Yeah, 2.5 I think would be fine. Much like how we paid Mantha, sure. But a 1 year show me deal.
I think somebody would pay him more than that.
Probably. But
even if it's not in the NHL, I think he'd go back home for more than that. So I think the question will be what he wants.
Yeah. Be interesting to see. In effect, he and Sharangovich are kind of like the Flames trade deadline acquisitions because they've been kind of non-existent for the first half of the year. And now we have an extra line of players that are actually doing well.
Yeah, along with a guy who wasn't in the lineup tonight, and that's Rory Kearns. They brought Kevin Rooney back in the lineup. I'm kind of surprised. To me, if you've got Kearns on the line, if you've got him recalled, use him.
Well, it's one of those that because he's a young player, I don't mind him getting the odd game off to watch and evaluate. Because I'm sure that the coaching staff has him with a little playbook of what to do in certain situations and to look for them specifically. And we've seen this throughout the years with all the guys that have come up, where they get to sit for a game here and there just to try and learn. And, because he's fairly skilled, and it's just that a few times he was slightly out of position, I found, defensively. And, it's hard to rely on a guy that is okay offensively and kind of not good at all defensively. So, as we've seen with Kuzmenko. And so if he can learn on the fly how to improve those secondary aspects of his game, that bodes well for him like next year and beyond.
Yeah, when you put it that way, I kind of agree with you. I guess as long as you're going to get him back in, next game, sure. But if he's going to be sitting for 2, 3, 4 games in a row, I think you have to send him back to the Wranglers.
Then I agree. Like if he's going to be out for like the next week or all the way through till the tournament thing, then send him down to the Wranglers. But for the time being, why not?
Yeah, even over the next week, the Flames have 3 games at home. They're at home until the 1st of December. 1st of February. I was looking at the wrong button on their schedule here. So I could even see him going up and down over the next week.
Yeah.
If they're not going to play him, send him down. He can still come watch the game from the press box if they want him to, but I think send him down, get him the reps, and bring him back up if you need him. But I understand why they might have brought him on the road trip. But I think right now he just needs some reps somewhere. So good week for the Flames. The Flames fell out of the playoff spot after that weird road trip where they played St. Louis twice, and now they're back in it. If we take a look after this week now in the Pacific Division, the Calgary Flames played 48 games, 24 wins, 17 losses, 7 overtime losses for 55 points, puts them 4th in the Pacific. Vancouver right behind them at 52, LA right above them at 58, and then Vegas and Edmonton obviously above them as well. And in the Western Conference wild card, the Calgary Flames are second wild card right now. Colorado right above them at 60 points and Vancouver right below them. If the season were to end right now, Matt, the Calgary Flames would be taking on the Winnipeg Jets.
That would be fun.
What we saw tonight times 4 to 7, depending on how many times you can beat them.
Yeah, you just have to tell Rasmus, don't punch Fleury, punch Hellebuck.
Well, Fleury won't be there to be punched.
I know, exactly. Wrong goalie. Hit him instead.
Just look for the twine. Doesn't matter who's wearing it. Just look for the twine. So, yeah, I thought overall a good week for the Flames. I wasn't really sure how this one would pan out. I predicted 2 wins, but I wasn't totally sure with this one. But I think a good, after some of the challenges they've had, like last week with the St. Louis games, I think this was a good kind of reset.
Yes, I agree.
And that's what it felt like to me. It felt like kind of resetting, trying some new, lines, trying some new combinations, getting some new guys out there, and really kind of resetting for the Flames. One thing I did want to ask you about is, based on what we've seen this week, and especially this Winnipeg game, with Dan Vladar not looking great, and the workload that we're starting to see here, is it fair to say right now that Dustin Wolf is now the starting goaltender for the Calgary Flames?
Yes, and I think that barring anything bizarre happening, that you'll see Wolf probably playing 3 out of 4 games or 4 out of 5. Like he did play the 4 previous contests prior to today's game against Winnipeg. And I think that moving forward, you're going to see him get more of a lion's share of the load. And, if the Flames are in, trying to make the playoffs mode, then you need to put your best lineup out there, and that means putting your best goaltender out there. And Wolf is used to playing a starter's load in the AHL. He played the lion's share of the games each of the last couple of seasons with the Wranglers. So it makes perfect sense to have him be the guy who gets like the 55 to 60 start type player instead of the 50-50. It made sense in the first half of the season, but it, especially over the last month, it's really broken the one way.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that Dustin Wolf, we all knew it was coming. At some point, I think that Dustin Wolf would be the starter. I didn't think it would take this long, but I think you've definitely made that clear internally and externally, and I think that there's, now when you're approaching Dan Vladar, whether that be for trade or for negotiation, and we've talked about this before, I think you now approach that with you are the number 2.
Well, and the thing is that with Cooley playing so well with the Wranglers, he is hurt right now, so it's kind of a moot point. But, if he continues to play well once he's back, it makes a lot more sense for the Flames to move on from Vladar even, because he has struggled mightily over the last month, as much as Wolf has played well. And, it with Cooley having a one-way deal next year, he's already kind of penciled in to be the Flames' backup. So I think just for getting an asset...
Yes and no. I mean, money-wise, I think they could afford to send him down on a one-way. Remember, one-way doesn't necessarily mean, you're free of waivers or anything, but I don't know he would clear.
Yeah, well, and especially with how well he's playing. He's also a fairly young goalie as well, I mean, yeah. So you might as well see what you have. And, much like with Vladar when we first got him, give him a bit of a runway to see if he can be an NHL goaltender and, go from there.
Yeah, and, we Devin Cooley is back. He played 61-29 in tonight's game against the Gulls. So he's back on the ice. That was a 5-4 overtime win for the Gulls tonight. Dan Vladar has looked good. Even when we had Markstrom here, Dan Vladar looked good, but he always, as far as I can remember, had periods of inconsistency. There was always these periods where he'd go and he would go from looking really good to just looking lousy to then sort of leveling off and going good again. And that
he's
just
basically
seems to be Dan
playing.
Vladar.
Yeah, he's basically David Riddick 2.0, where good for a bit, bad for a bit, but not with enough consistency one way or another, and a fine backup basically, and adequate, unspectacular, just he's there.
See, to me, I think you need a backup who is reliably okay.
Yes,
if I have a back-to-back or I want to put him in against a lousy team and he's having an off night, I'm not going to do well. I think you need the Michael Stone of goalies, and I think most good backups are good at being, adequate on most nights. Yeah,
like a guy like a James Reimer or Peter Mrazek. Who's just, a solid Anton Hudobin from a couple of years ago where, you knew what you're going to get as a backup from that player. And Vladar, some games he'll have like a 7 out of 10 game, and then you'll have a game like tonight where he gives up 3, maybe 4 bad goals and, basically tanks the team out of a competitive game. And those kind of performances, if I'm the coaching staff looking at the game today, you might not see him until maybe the Toronto game, for, which a week and a half from now, based on his game today. And, all these points are important for this team, and you can't risk throwing them away against, the divisional opponents and such.
Yeah,
or conference opponents.
To me, you need a reliable backup, and not everybody can do that. There's a skill set to being ready when you're not playing often. But I just think that Dan Vladar might be, and I think David Riddick's a great example, just too unknown as to what you're going to get when you put him in. And we often see then teams either don't want to play their backup and they will overplay their starter, which Calgary's done, or when the backup's in, the team doesn't play well in front of them because they're trying to overcompensate for that. So you need a guy that your team can trust equally for what they have to do. I mean, your backup doesn't have to go lights out, but the team has to be confident that he can do his job. And I think we've finally given David Riddick, or Dan Vladar, just like we did with David Riddick, enough rope to see what we've got there. I mean, with Riddick, we weren't sure at first if he was a starter, if he was a backup, what he was, and they gave him enough starter minutes to realize he's probably not a starter. So now we know what we've got, for better or for worse. And I think that we're seeing the same with Vladar now, that, we now, I think, have a better notion of what Vladar is. It doesn't mean Vladar is not useful, or we shouldn't keep Vladar, have Vladar here. But I think you now can make the appropriate decision, as you said, is Cooley the backup? Is Vladar the backup? But we now, I think, have a better idea of what we've got there.
Yeah. Today basically gave me flashbacks to 2007, where, the Flames would have Kiprusoff play most of the games, and then you'd see Curtis McElhinney every month or so, and the team would get blown out 6-1. And it'd be kind of a complete throwaway game. And, like it felt very much that same vibe from this, where like you have such good goaltending on the one hand, and then the backup goes in and it's not good. And like Calgary, we don't need a repeat scenario. Like we've already seen that particular melodrama before, so like the Flames need to address the backup situation as well, to make sure that we actually have somebody that's a consistently decent player.
Yeah, and I don't think that you're in a position where you want to be overplaying Dustin Wolf. He's not the next Mika Kiprasov. The league has changed. You don't want this guy to be playing 65, 70 games every year.
No, exactly. And realistically, like this team, in order to be successful, like we need to get like this era's iteration of like Cujo or Vesatoskala, who can play that 1B role and be okay, instead of, like, oh God, we can't put the backup in.
You want to hear an interesting stat I just looked up? Dustin Wolf has played 45 NHL career games. Dan Vladar's played 96. Yeah. So pretty much double as many as Wolf has. Like, again, this guy has not played a lot of games, but I get the sense that we sort of know what we've got there now.
Yeah. Well, especially like over the last 3 seasons, like that's enough games to get a playbook on the guy. And, it's hard when, goalies are always difficult, and you always wait for guys who are kind of that tweener type like Vladar to either elevate or just stay where they're at. And he's really just staying exactly where he was 3 years ago, and he's not really got any better than he was when we first acquired him, which again
I think is fine in some cases.
Yes, like if you have a guy like Markstrom,
projects as your backup.
Yeah, like if you have a guy like Markstrom who, like, you're going to play Markstrom if the game's important. Having a guy like Vladar is fine, but in the Flames' current situation, you don't want to rush Wolf into, oh, well, we need you to play 60 games because the other guys, so like it's just not a good situation.
While it was a different era, I mean, Jamie McLennan made a lot of money being a career backup. Like there's some guys that's okay.
Well, and James Reimer is basically doing the exact same thing right now, where he's bounced around. I think he's on a team number 8 now, and he's just being the effective, I'll come in every third game and play.
Yep. So we'll see. I think Dan Vladar is one of the most interesting stories from here to the end of the season, and what happens there, whether he resigns, whether he gets traded, whether he goes to the open market. I think that's going to be one of the most interesting stories between now and July 2nd. Matt, you and I did not think Walker Duehr would ever get claimed on waivers, and he did.
This actually surprised me way more than Cole Schwindt getting claimed earlier this season. It's like, but why? And
we've talked about Walker Duehr. He went down to the American League this year. He looked really good for the AHL team. They brought him back up. He looked okay for a little bit and then started to fall back into his Walker Duehr patterns. So the team, I would say, rightfully sent him back down. Like, he wasn't looking like he'd earn an NHL spot. So in order to do that, had to put him on waivers. And San Jose said, wow, we like guys that don't play good hockey. Let's take us one of them.
Yeah, and we need a body because we're probably going to sell off anything that moves in the next coming month. And we just need bodies after that. And I think that's... the only reason.
And the thing to remember is when you take a guy on waivers, you're expected to keep him on your NHL team for the rest of the year. Like, if you waive him again, Calgary would have the right to take him back, and probably would, and put him back on the farm. Like, why not? But, and the fact that San Jose claimed him, I mean, they're probably high in the waiver priority list, but I doubt there was anyone else in that list.
And I would be absolutely shocked if anybody else put a claim in. Like, I'm shocked that San Jose put a claim in. I understand why they did, because, hey, free body, yay. But
if I was the guy at the league that got that paperwork, I would have called them and like, did you put the wrong name on this? Are you sure this is the guy you want?
Okay.
But anyway, so Walker Duehr now we're number 50.
Did somebody get a hold of your fax machine? Just making sure. Okay, we're good.
Walker Duehr now wearing 55 for San Jose, and in his first game, scores a goal with the San Jose Sharks.
Yep. Right place, right time, standing in front of the net. It hit him, and he scored. So good for him. Glad that he scored. And I do wish him all the best. It's just one of those where it just perplexing. Like, I could understand Schwint better because, like, at least he's a center. And, centers are generally more valuable, even though, like, Schwint was not very good either.
Well, I thought Schwint was good for what he was. I mean, I don't think he was ever going to be a top 6. He looked good in the American League, and I think he would have been a fine, right now when the Flames have had issues with Rooney, I thought Schwint would have been a fine replacement.
Yes, but, Duehr, though, being a winger, like, yes, he has size, but, like, that's basically, and he's quick. Like, bit of a bizarre move by San Jose, but they are in the wilderness right now anyway, so it kind of makes sense.
Yeah, I guess I just thought to myself, really, there's nobody else? Like, you have nobody on your farm you could bring up that would be better? Like, I could see if Walker Duehr had maybe, sort of like a Jacob Peltier where he looked good. He was a high pick. Okay, maybe we can revive this guy. Like, Walker Duehr, let's be honest, is a nobody. The Flames signed as a UFA. He looked marginally good enough to be on a fourth line for a rebuilding team, then started looking bad. It's almost like when they cleared out the dressing room, he hid so he didn't get traded. He was still around, and it's like, oh yeah, you're still here. And then they sent him down again, and I don't know. I want to know I want to be a fly on the wall of San Jose's office when they said this. We have nobody better in our AHL system already.
Like, the only thing that would make any sense to me on that front is that maybe they wanted to weaken the Wranglers for some sort of playoff possible matchup between the Barracuda and the Wranglers, but yeah. Other than that, like...
Yeah, but we got enough other guys, though. It's not like, one guy is going to change that.
No. Just very odd. Very, very odd.
I mean, I'm just looking here at the names of the forwards in San Jose, and I can think of two that I think are at least off the top of my head who I'm like, yeah, okay, that guy might work as well. The only thing I can think of is, again, it's like, let's leave these guys in the AHL to develop them, as you and I have said so many times, and let's bring in Duehr because we know what we've got there.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? He's good enough to be on our NHL team when we're not going anywhere. But yeah, I did not expect that. I think I texted you minutes after he was picked up, and it's like, wow, Walker Duehr's gone. I don't know if I should be sad or not, or like...
I'm happy for him that he gets another shot in the NHL with a different club, and wish him and everybody with him that, all the best, and, hopefully he can carve out a niche.
This has got to be the last straw, though, right? Like, if you can't make the roster in San Jose...
Well, and we've seen guys like, say, Derek Grant, who kind of were in that, okay, I guess you're a player, move on from the team and then proceed to carve out a niche in the NHL for an extended period of time. And same with like Curtis Lazar, who was absolutely terrible while he was here, and yet he's still playing in New Jersey. And
we gave up a second for him.
I know. Really dumb trade. There was a number of really dumb trades. That's why we're kind of where we're at right now. So... Between that and the Hamonic deals, it's just like, what are you doing? But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, good for him. Can you remember one time Calgary lost two guys on waivers in 1 year?
It's been a while. I cannot remember. It's been a really long time.
I don't know if this means that we have valuable assets or what this means, but yeah, we lost two guys for free.
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, a couple years ago we lost a couple of defensemen, like Milos and can't remember the other guy.
Oh yeah, the year they lost what was his name? The guy who went to the Coyotes.
Yes.
The top
Valimaki.
He was one of our Valimaki. One of our top
Milos,
picks, and I already don't remember him. Yeah. And yeah, so that was probably the last time.
Yep.
And then another roster move here that's interesting, and I'm still trying to figure out how they're able to do this, but Tyson Barrie was sent to the Wranglers on a conditioning stint. I was of the belief, reading the Collective, you had to have been injured to go on a conditioning stint.
No, if you're actually haven't played in a while, you are. I have seen other teams do that as well for like their 8th defenseman. I think Mike Stone went on a conditioning stint once too.
Yeah, but I think Stone though was hurt. I don't know. Maybe could be. Okay.
No idea.
They sent him down. I remember they sent him down one time at the deadline just to call him up the next day, and he didn't even get conditioned. He just sat on an airplane for a long time.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tyson Barrie down in the Wranglers right now. Based on what happened with that ball hit, I don't know how long he'll stay on the Wranglers. I think they may need defensive bodies, but either way, I think sure if you want to send him down there, get some veteran experience down there, great. It's not like he's going too far, but I don't know. Sure, keep him ready, I guess. I just don't know that this is going to impact things one way or the other.
Yeah, it depends on how long Ball's out. Like if he, say, misses like this week, I think you just kind of run with the guys you have. If he's going to be out, say, till the tournament thing, then you probably recall Soloviev or Kuznetsov, who are the most veteran of the Wranglers.
Well, technically, you would probably have to call Barrie up and then send him back down officially.
No, you'd have to play
That's right, because you would
Ball on IR.
Have, yeah, that's right. You'd have Ball on IR, so you would have an extra roster spot. So yeah, you could be right. I think that might be the time to get guys in.
Yeah, it just depends on how long. And I think that Soloviev would probably be the guy just because he's the best of the veteran young guys. Yeah. And then, let it rip with him and
even
whatever.
In that case, I probably would officially send Barrie down. I don't think he's going to get claimed, but I think you just need a body down there on the blue line at that point.
Yeah.
I mean, they're already so short of forwards. They've called a couple up from the ECHL this week. Like, I think I could totally see, send Tyson Barrie down while Soloviev's up here.
Yes, I think that we will have to consider other teams in the future to get some bodies down there.
You know what, though? I think... I don't know. Yeah, the Flames have the money. Like, I can see them just making a future considerations deal to get a body. Or sometimes you see AHL trades even happen,
Yes.
You would be so proud of them, Matt. They have Jonathan Aspero as a defenseman playing forward because they're out of guys.
Well,
you love to convert defensemen to forwards.
The Shillington of forwards. Yeah.
That's right. You love to convert defensemen to forwards. So Jonathan Aspero is your new favorite Wrangler because now he's playing forward. But
excellent.
Yeah, they need some bodies while these call-ups are happening, and so I think you'll probably see some sort of an AHL deal, or I mean, we've even seen this week with Tony DeAngelo and stuff, some free agents signed, right? Some guys signed out of some other league or something. But I would be surprised if you saw Soloviev come up and Barrie come up. I think one of them is going to have to stay on the Wranglers. How long? I guess we're talking about bodies for the AHL. What would it take if you're Conroy to make a move to bring in an NHL body? How long would Ball have to be out?
Honestly, it would be he's out for the season, and even then, I think I would just go with Soloviev or Kuznetsov, or just cycle all of the young guys in until one of them stands out.
Yeah, or not even that. I would just run the 7 I've got.
Yes, either that or that. Yes.
Like right now, as neat as it is, and we talk about this every week, as neat as it is, the Flames are in a playoff spot. I think you've just got to stay the course and see what you've got there. And
and especially with all three of Soloviev, Poirier, and Kuznetsov playing extremely well for the Wranglers, and all kind of pushing towards being in the NHL themselves. Like if you're going to make a move, I think you have to reward the young guys who are actually playing exceptionally well. Like all three of them are amongst the league leaders in basically all the defenseman categories. So, basically pick your poison, throw whomever you think is the best fit for the need at the time, and let her rip and see. And it'll be interesting.
I could see doing that, bringing them up one at a time. I wouldn't bring them all up.
Oh, no.
But I could see bringing them up one at a time for sure.
Yeah, kind of give everybody a 2-week tryout kind of thing to, here's 3 or 4 games. If you play exceptionally well, you stay. if you're kind of falling back or off to the onto the wayside, then we'll cycle the next guy in, and because like the older two guys, Poirier and or not Poirier, Soloviev and Kuznetsov, I think would have to pass through waivers to get reassigned down there after like 10 games or 30 days.
That's it. So. Yeah, even if they play exceptionally well, I wouldn't keep them for that reason. Like, I don't think that you'd want them all year. You play them for a couple games, say, okay, you got your taste, we'll see you in training camp.
Yeah, or, hey, you made the team for the rest of the year. Congrats.
Yeah, but even then, I think if you wanted a guy just stay up here, it'd probably be Poirier. Or you've got enough bodies, just keep the guys you've got, but at least you know what you have out of those three.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that the Wranglers are poised to go on a run this year, and I don't think you want to disturb that.
No.
By keeping one of those guys up here. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens with them, but I don't think you go out and make a move to replace Bahl, but I can see them bring in another NHL defenseman. Like, I could see, sort of like Treliving used to make depth moves at the deadline. If the Flames are still in it, I could see them bringing in a Derek Forbort type defenseman, a 6th-round pick or something like that.
I would absolutely hate that kind of trade myself. Like, right now, where the Flames are at, like, they need to just hold on. As much as you want to, I think, like, the only reasonable course is just to stay the course and hold, even though...
Yeah, I don't disagree, but I think, if you're not giving up much, or if you can get a guy as part of another deal and absorb some salary, I could see them bringing in a body.
Yes.
Even if you moved to 6th or 7th, I think the Flames have enough picks you could afford to move that 6th or 7th for, Forbort or somebody like that. Not Forbort himself, but like the Flames did when they brought those guys in.
I also just wanted to touch on one prospect in particular that we haven't really talked about. Trevor Hoskin, he was the Flames' 4th-round pick in this past draft. He was drafted out of the OJHL and as an overager. And is
that the Ontario Junior League, or is that the Orange Julius League?
Pretty much, yes. He was with the Kohlberg Cougars in that league. And, a lot of people were like, what? Why? Huh? Who's this guy? What league is that? At the time. And he's went to the NCAA this year, and he's actually 12th in the country in scoring as a freshman, which is actually ridiculously good. He has 9 goals and 20 assists and 29 points in 26 games, which if you're anywhere near a point per game at any point in your college career, like, you're doing exceptionally well. To do it as a freshman, it's like, oh, you're actually a standout. So, good on the scouting department to find this kid. He seems to be doing exceptionally well. And, like, the Flames might have found out of nowhere gem in that he's a 6'1" right winger, and he skates fast and can score apparently. So, and
being that he's in the NCAA, they will have 4 years of his rights, so you'll have time to see him mature.
Just nice to see somebody that we just recently drafted coming out of nowhere to be, well ahead of where he probably would have been drafted today. Like, he probably would have went in the 2nd round early if they redid it now.
Yeah, we'll keep an eye on him and see how he does. I guess the next thing we should probably talk about, we can't go a week without talking about the big trade that was made this week and some potential not implications, but how it could affect the Flames. We all know that the Colorado Avalanche and the Carolina Hurricane made a big deal. Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall going on the Hurricanes. Colorado gets Marty Necas, Jack Drury, a 2nd and a 4th, and of course the Chicago Blackhawks act as a broker there, taking half of the Rantanen contract and getting a 3rd for moving Hall. Overall, what do you think of the deal?
I think that in terms of just like on ice assets, I think each team did well with respect to their situation. In terms of, things off the ice, I think Colorado did a big job of blowing up their team. and pissing off Nathan McKinnon and their coach.
I think this could have long-term ramifications for Colorado.
I think that this is step one for Colorado imploding, to be honest. It's going to be hard for their team to keep cohesion after that kind of thing. It would be literally like the Oilers trading Draisaitl out of the blue. It's just like, okay, why? For people in the room, like the deal itself made sense, but it's, just for the person.
It's not too often we see a good midseason hockey deal. I think the last one was probably the Eichel deal, and I think this is a really good midseason hockey deal.
Yeah, and realistically, basically all the media is crapping on Chicago for, oh, you lost this trade. Actually, I thought they did the best out of all three teams in terms of what they gave up, because they still save like $1.5 million, because they didn't absorb anything on Hall's contract. They just ate $4.5 million of Rantanen's, and
essentially they still make money on this deal. Like they're paying less than they were.
Yes, and then on top of it, they get their own third round pick back, which will probably be 63rd or 64th overall, or 65th, pardon me, because they're terrible, so 65 or 66. If they waited till the trade deadline to trade Hall for a third, you're probably getting pick 90 or 85 or something like that. So,
and not saying they would, but I think just the fact they have all three of them gives them the chance to offer sheet if they wanted to.
They can't. It's for this year's draft, not next year's. So they are for their own, draft number, because they can kind of guarantee that they're going to be bad at this point. So it just a shrewd move by them. And realistically, they're not really, they would have ate 3 of Hall's 6, and instead they're eating 4.5 by eating Rantanen's instead.
And losing Hall isn't going to change their on-ice product much at all.
Not at all.
So, Matt, a lot of people since this happened have been talking about, as you and I have, that the Flames need to be using their cap as a weapon this year and weaponizing that cap space. And then looking at this going, well, really, if you look at it, the Blackhawks got a third for eating that deal. If you break it down, they got a third for eating the deal. A lot of people said, is that all it costs these days? Do you think this is going to set a bad market for the Flames to be able to eat?
To be honest, I don't view it that way at all.
I don't either, but that's what a lot of people are saying.
Trading Hall for a third round pick with just a slight twist of, eating more than the 50% via some shenanigans, basically. And, basically moving it from a late third to an early third for eating an extra $1 million, to me, that makes perfect sense in my books. And, Calgary, if they can get a better pick, a mid third round pick for eating $1.5 million, which in effect, that's what the Blackhawks did, sure. I don't really viewing it as affecting the market for retaining salary because of the fact that it's not like Calgary is, in an urgent need to, say, trade Vladar or trade, Kadri or Coleman or Huberdeau. There's not really any onus on that where they can just, eat somebody else's bad contract as a, three-way broker in this situation.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think every time I've seen online somebody say, is that all it costs to eat the money? I remind them that Hall was part of this and an asset going out as well. So you've got to look at that. I like your analogy though of $3 million, third round pick for the $1 million. I think, up to about $2 million, I'd eat it for a third. Anything more than that, we need a higher return. Mm-hmm. And I mean, Chicago didn't have a ton of money. They've still got $5 million left, which if you're looking at a premier player is not a lot. When you look at the market to broker a big deal, and I'm thinking at some point, this JT Miller deal is going to get done, and somebody's going to need to move some money somewhere. You've got Montreal and New York with $7 million each. You got LA with 11, Calgary with 16, Anaheim with 17, Columbus with 17. There's only so many teams you're going to be able to go to. So I think that Calgary, Anaheim, Columbus are going to be able to set the market on that. I don't think this is going to affect that market at all.
No, and realistically, like Calgary, for any of the teams wanting to say add that type of player, can say trade their, like how the Rangers dump Barclay Goodrow, like that equivalent type of player, like a solid third line guy that's just maybe making $1 million or $2 more than he should, in order to broker that deal by shipping them to us with, here's a second or third round pick or a player or prospect or whatever to eat that. And Calgary would be perfectly fine getting like another Blake Coleman for like another 2 years type of thing.
Yeah.
As long as they get things attached to it.
Yeah, I have a feeling that whoever ends up getting, one of the guys from Vancouver, whichever one ends up moving, is going to need a broker. And I think, you're not going to get a first for a pick like that, but I think that you'll get more than a third.
Yeah, like unless you're literally eating a like $7 million contract for like a year, like this year and next type of thing, where like the guy is, basically the Monahan trade in reverse. Like unless that kind of thing happens, like that.
Yeah, or if
Calgary's
a team came to Calgary and
goods.
wanted them to eat like half of Miller for the whole, because you can't eat half of it for partial.
No.
If they wanted Calgary to eat half that deal for 6 or 7 years or whatever it is, then I could see, we're talking first plus to do that.
Yes.
But if it's a year or two, you're, a third, sure. And even if it is a third plus like a prospect, I think that's a fine return. Like you're not getting a first for eating somebody's $2 million, $3 million.
No, and it's like if Calgary, if they have to take on a contract that's like a $5 million contract, like say Andrei Palat, for example, from New Jersey, where, he's a serviceable third line guy that can chip in here and there, but his contract ends after next season, then sure, we can eat that. Staple a prospect or a pick to that, and, we can eat that. Because it's not like
Palat would still be useful for the Flames.
Yes, exactly. And like Calgary kind of needs to get inventive on the shopping front, because realistically you're going to want space for guys like Zari and Coronado to grow into like first line players. So you're not, like even in free agency, like you're not going to want to go get Rantanen specifically. Like if you do, if you can, but like you're not going to want to get like the first liner,
and he's not going to want to come to Calgary right now.
No, but it's one of those where, like Calgary needs to get quality middle six guys, so that way they can push guys like Rooney out of the lineup entirely. And if you can get creative and get some assets for taking some contracts that. Like if you're going to say sign a guy like Palat to like a 1 year, $4 million deal, but instead you have to eat an extra $2 million and you get a pick for, doing another team a favor. Okay.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And we'll talk more about that as we look ahead to the deadline in coming weeks. But here's a crazy idea for you I was thinking about this week. I think you're right that the Flames need those middle six guys, and I think, that's one of the reasons I like the Mantha deal for what it was. It was a veteran player to put with some of your young guys. Taylor Hall's deal's over at the end of the year. He hasn't really shown he's anything special, but he's a Calgary boy. Could you see him take the Mantha deal, the 1 year show-me deal with his hometown team next year?
Yeah, sure. I'd be perfectly, like a 1 year, like $2.5, $3 million contract.
Yeah.
Sure,
I'd
why not?
probably go as high as 3.5 on him.
Yeah. And why not? Anybody like that where, you're a player who's like, I wouldn't even mind Mantha on another 1 year for the same that we paid him this year deal.
I think you've only got room for one of those deals next year, looking at the guys they need.
Yes. But, like any of that type of guy, and just depends on who and what's available and willing to sign here. That was kind of why I added that. But, and it'll be just interesting to see how things shake out. But, if I'm Conroy, I'm looking at, basically getting like another line of the Backlund Coleman line, if I can do so for just, oh, they're slightly overpaid and the other team needs the cap space. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Calgary, if they can use that space, will do well. And I said this last week, if they don't use that ability, I mean, if a deal's out there that needs a broker and they don't broker it, I think that you got to question Conroy a little bit.
Well, yeah, and that's why, like, I'm reticent to see
if there's
this.
Nothing to broker, you can't fault him.
Oh, no, but I'm also reticent to see, like, the Flames use assets for, late, like, even if it's like a 7th round pick for a defenseman, just because of the fact that the Flames, I think, just, especially at the draft, need to throw as many darts at the board until they get, like, the Goodrow or a Monahan or a Tkachuk level of guy in their organization, because like they're going to need to supplement their team through the draft, and the only way to build this team into a contender, you need to hit on all of your draft picks that you can. And like you see with Dallas, how they got Wyatt Johnson and Robertson for with 2nd round picks, or like Braden Point in Tampa with a 3rd round pick and Kucherov with a 2nd. Like, Calgary needs as many things in order to turn this rebuild, because Wolf's gonna prevent this team from being a bottom 10 team.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you, but I think if they really need another 7th, I mean, you could probably move down 1 pick at some point and pick up a 7th again.
Yes.
Like, I wouldn't want to move anything 4th or higher to get just a depth player for this year. But if they want to move a 7th to bring in, a body, I'd be okay with that. Because if you really need that 7th, if there's a guy your scouts say, we got to get this guy, we can find a 7th.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you can move down in the 4th by 2 spots and pick up a 7th for your troubles.
Probably.
Or even in the 1st, move down 1 spot and get a 6th for your troubles or something like that. Like, those bottom picks are so readily available. I mean, hell, if we're going to take on $1.5 million from somebody, make them give us a 7th back. Like, we can replace that pretty easily.
I agree.
Well,
I just don't like the idea of sending out assets at this point with where the Flames are at.
I would agree with you, but I also guess, cap space is an asset too, right? Everything's an asset. And I think you have to look at where are they and what are they doing and what is the benefit. And if we've got a guy who, if we run into some troubles and we want to, the only reason I would bring in a veteran guy is I think that there's value right now to keeping the young guys on the farm and going on a run for the Wranglers. And so I might bring in a guy for a 7th round pick to keep Soloviev or keep Kuznetsov or keep Peltier on the Wranglers because we need them there to make that run happen. That's the only reason I might do it.
Yeah, I agree.
I'm not gonna trade our way into the playoffs, but I'd be okay to bring in some veteran help because I think this is. I mean, we've said in the past, but the Wranglers are a fantastic team this year. Like, I think you've got to look at both.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that wraps up the week, I think, Matt. Should we look ahead at what's coming up here?
Yes, definitely.
Last week, I won the prediction game. It's been a while, but I thought we would beat Buffalo, Minnesota, lose to Winnipeg. You thought we'd beat Buffalo, lose to Minnesota and Winnipeg. So it's now 3-2 in your favor. So I got to get back ahead of you before the end of the season for everything to be right in the world again. Calgary is back home now. They've come home after their 2-game road trip. They go from playing the best team in the West, which is Winnipeg, to playing the best team in the East, which is on Tuesday. The Washington Capitals come to town, a 7 p.m. start. Then on Thursday night, the Anaheim Ducks are in town, a 7 p.m. start. And then Saturday night, 8 p.m. for Hockey Night in Canada, an 8 p.m. start against the Detroit Red Wings here in town. So 3 games at home. What are you thinking?
I'm glad to see it Eat Bread back in the Dome on Tuesday. I'm looking forward to that. Honestly, I think that both Anaheim and Detroit are beatable, just because, well, Anaheim's terrible and Detroit's just kind of there. They've not been, like, they're around the playoff picture, but they're not quite.
Detroit feels like a team that's coming out of their rebuild, but nobody told them they're coming out of the rebuild.
Yeah, like they're not quite there yet. And
yeah,
it's like they're a year or two away from actually being a good team. It's just, they're not there yet. And, well, basically they're us, the East version of it.
They're further along than we are.
Yes. And Washington, Dubois and Eat Bread have been very good for both the, for the Capitals, and part of the reason
Fans
why...
that don't know, that's Eat Bread is former Calgary Flame Andrew Mangiapane.
Yeah. They're both playing very well, and part of the reason why the Capitals went from being the 8th seed last year to the best team in the NHL this year. And Ovechkin's been playing really good, so it'll be nice to see. I think that they're going to lose the Washington game and win the other two. Be interesting to see, though.
I mean, like you said, Anaheim beatable for sure. Detroit, I think, if they can keep playing like they did this week, they can grind Detroit out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's going to be an easy win, but I think they can grind the Red Wings down.
Yes.
The one I'm not sure about is the Washington game. Washington's a good team. Calgary can be a good team too when they want to. And I think it depends how they get started with that one. And if they watch Ovechkin play, which we've seen them do sometimes when Ovechkin and Crosby have been in town, we sort of, watch them make plays around us. And it's like, oh, wow, that was neat. Or if they can actually go in and counter that.
Yeah. I think Ovechkin usually scores at least one goal against us pretty much every game. So, yeah.
And he's going to. I mean, he's a great player, right? But there's been times that, our defensemen just kind of stopped and let him get around us. And, we've seen it even with, I remember a couple times in Pittsburgh games when that team was really good. And they would just, our guys would do almost nothing. And it was like they were just in awe of watching these players.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go a little bit of a different direction in this one. And I'm going to say they win all three. I don't think it's going to be a blowout in any of them. I think they could blow it in Anaheim, but I don't think they will, knowing how the Flames like to
keep
play
it close
down to their opponents. But I think that you could see some very close or even overtime games in some of these. But I think being in Calgary, I think that these guys may have some motivation here to get themselves up for the Capitals.
Yep. And, with them opening a... 5-point lead on the Blues for 10th? Right now. And the Flames have 2 games in hand on St. Louis. They're beginning to separate themselves from the pack and actually be, closer to, one of the top 3 seeds in the division. So it'll be interesting to see how they respond. They're actually a legit team now. So
and we're in the second half of the season. If I'm leadership on this team, if I'm Backlund or even the coach, I'm saying if you guys think you're a playoff team, we need to create some space here. If you're going to do this, we need to create that space in the standings.
Yeah, you're not surprising teams like you did early in the year.
Exactly.
Calgary was kind of the plucky underdog for the first 40 games, but it's okay, cool. Now you're actually one of the good teams. So, and teams are going to see you coming, where you might have been able to sneak by with some good effort and some good bounces. So, everybody on the team needs to start picking up their game if they actually want to, ensure that they're a playoff team and, make the difference between Calgary and Vancouver 6, 7, 8 points as well. And, put the pressure on Vancouver to, trade off half their team.
Yep.
We'll see.
Yeah. We'll see what happens there. But I think that if they're going to do this, they've got to start showing that, they can have a week where they can beat those teams they need to beat.
Yep. And as always, go Flames, go.
Fireside Chat is hosted by Dan Stevenson, co-hosted by Matt DeBorg. This episode produced and edited by Peter Marino. Fireside Chat is licensed under Creative Commons license. For full license details, visit firesidechat.ca.